Warning, the following video contains heavy spoilers for Bendy and the Dark Revival. It mentions events that I have not yet covered in my walkthrough, so be warned. Bendy and the Ink Machine left us with a lot of questions. What happened to Henry? How did Allison Pendle and Thomas Connor become Allison and Tom? What is the cycle? Well, Bendy and the Dark Revival answered all of these questions and a few more. Indeed, the paradox I discussed is finally explained. Here is the truth about it and the events of both games. First, let's start off with the cycle. The cycle is a pocket dimension or adjacent universe that was created alongside the Ink Demon. Time doesn't function normally inside of it. Ink creatures born of the machine live inside of it, some created from the remains of lost souls and some created strictly of the machine in the images of those who escaped it. I'll explain that process more in a minute. The cycle is forever tethered to the Ink Demon. He cannot die because he and it are intrinsically linked. However, the cycle can be reset. When the Ink Demon is shown the end, it must abide by the rules and end, only to be reborn into a new cycle. The Dark Revival is not exactly a new cycle as expected, but is instead a tampered cycle. One that has been dangerously changed by Wilson in his efforts to rule it. We'll go over Wilson a little later, but we'll need context first. So, people die and become monsters in the cycle. However, people can also be recreated into the cycle, as is revealed by none other than Joey Drew. Or, that is, the ideals of Joey Drew recreated into the machine. Audrey meets Joey Drew in the game, but it is not the real man but a reflection of him created into the machine. In Bendy and the Ink Machine we learn that this idealistic version of Joey Drew is just a mask he wears to cover up the over-ambitious businessman underneath. But when recreated into the machine, this rotoscope of Joey Drew is that idealized version. At least, from our encounters he seems to be. He is aware of the real Joey Drew's history and condemns it, but he is a better version of him. In all likeliness this means that this Joey was created at the end of Joey Drew's life. A last memento to leave behind. Which is when we move on to Henry, and the truth about who he is. As suggested in Bendy and the Ink Machine, Henry is trapped in a repeating cycle. Because he is not a human who was put into the cycle, but a recreation of Henry created so that Joey could take out his resentment and blame at the real Henry onto it. The real Henry Stein never returned to the studio. Or if he did, it was just a brief trip and then he returned home fine. The Henry we play in the first game and who, in a shock, we see in the second game, is none other than an Ink creation built in his image. So, what about Allison and Tom? Well, Joey reveals that he started to have a change of heart later into his life and with the help of Allison Pendle, whose friendship started to help him see the error of his ways. Over the years he became remorseful for what he had done and decided to help Henry by creating him an angel like he had. Allison Angel, created in the image of Allison Pendle, with the companionship of literal guard dog Tom. Because see, Joey Drew was able to affect the cycle from outside of it. As was Wilson, though it seems likely he was going in and out of it. The cycle can be manipulated and changed, and reset. Joey Drew wanted to fix his past mistakes, but when Wilson came in he wanted to decimate everything and rebuild it from the ground up. But who is Wilson? Wilson is the son of none other than Nathan Arch. Like Joey Drew, he was bitter and resentful, but his effects on the cycle were much more toxic. Wilson found the inhabitants of the cycle to be disgusting creatures who didn't deserve to live, but he found the infinite ability to create, and to bring those creations into the real world. To be useful for his plans. While Joey kept the cycle in place, Wilson is letting it leak into the real world. His plan was to stop the reset of the cycle by locking away cycle breakers, or those who may try to get in his way. This included Henry, Twisted Alice, and Sammy Lawrence. Which makes sense. Henry knows how to reset the cycle and is thus dangerous. Twisted Alice is completely mad, constantly working towards her own devices. And Sammy Lawrence is still entirely loyal to the Ink Demon, and unlike the Lost Ones has more power. Wilson also created the Keepers to sort the inhabitants of the cycle. Those deemed dangerous were locked away while those who didn't seem to be a threat were thrown back out into the world to wait until Wilson got his way. The Ink Demon was supposed to be killed, but his attachment to the cycle meant any efforts failed. So instead, he was tortured and brainwashed until he was forced to assume a small and defenseless form. One that was capable of feeling emotions and even fear, the perfect Bendy. Wilson's machines were used to enforce this form. This satisfied the Keepers, but Wilson was still determined to be rid of the Ink Demon. At some point Bendy escaped and continued to wander the cycle in this broken state, stuck in two existences of being. But what was Wilson's final goal in all of this? Well, it's kind of baffling, really. Wilson wanted to create a new deity to rule the cycle, one that he could control. This would be, God help me, Ship Ahoy Dudley. Ship Ahoy Dudley is a Bendy clone. You can tell from the shape to the shoes that's what he is. Wilson's poor attempt to replace him. But to do this he needs a pure, powerful soul to fuel this creation, and that's why he brings Audrey into the cycle. Or, that is, back into the cycle. Because as the Ink Demon says, the ink remembers her, she was born here, and it is not because she is a rotoscope of the original Audrey. No, Audrey is something much different. Audrey is Joey Drew's daughter, created through the ink machine. She is his perfect creation and, unless I understand it wrong, the first creation to come out of the machine and into the real world. Audrey doesn't remember this aspect of her life but is reminded by Joey Drew's memory, the Ink Demon, and Wilson himself. Though when time comes to offer herself up, she refuses, and a monstrosity is created in her place. Now we will get into the ending of Bendy and the Dark Revival and where we go from here. Audrey manages to force the Ink Demon to reset the cycle, and in the process she too is healed back to her former state. She promises to take Joey's place as caretaker of the Ink realm and rebuild it into a better world so that the inhabitants are well taken care of. It is also revealed that, as expected, the Ink Demon has been reborn once more. But this time he has taken a familiar form. Different, but similar. The same, but brand new. He starts out as a perfect Bendy. It is not a form he is forced into, but the one he is recreated into. He truly is now complete, and as revealed in the last moments of the game, he, like Audrey, can step out into the real world. So, is this the end of the Bendy series? Well, no. See, the end of the book shows the Gent Corporation seizing some of their assets. As we learn in the Dark Revival, the Gent Corporation is much shoddier than we initially assumed. Going so far as to kill off dozens of test subjects without batting an eye. But what were they testing out? It's unclear. And while it may be that this Gent Corporation is just what we see in the reflection of the machine, the audio logs suggest elsewise. Wilson himself even gives us a name. Alan Gray. What we know is that Alan Gray is the CEO of Gent, but we also know that he's hands-on enough that he actually showed up at Archgate Pictures asking for their assets. It is very clear that he was looking for the machine and is likely very aware of how valuable it truly is. This, I think, might be a heavy hint at the direction of the next game. From how this one ended, it is very likely we'll be playing Audrey again and extremely likely that Bendy will again be a fully fleshed ally. But only time will tell. For now, the Dark Revival has answered many, if not all of the leftover questions from the Ink Machine, and now we have a much better look at the world. Where do we go from here? Well, I think I made that clear, but as the series in general, I think this is a positive step towards a bright future. At least, Bendy's looking better. So, this is where I'm going to end the video. I hope maybe I cleared up a few things, and, if I didn't, I hope you at least enjoyed that crack I made at Ship Ahoy Dudley. My god, this thing, I can't even begin on my reaction for the first time I saw this. I didn't even know whether to laugh or to stare in shock at this bad Popeye.